It was an ordinary Tuesday evening, the kind where nothing stands out, and the world hums along without a hitch. I had just finished a long day at the office, and I was about to settle into my usual routine: dinner, some TV, then a few hours of winding down. It wasn't exciting, but it was comfortable. I had no idea that in a few hours, my life would be turned upside down, not by some grand betrayal, but by something as small and seemingly insignificant as a push notification. I'm Sam Fowler, 34, just an average guy trying to make a living. I'm married to Claire, the woman I've been with for the past 6 years. We're not the kind of couple that spends every minute together, but we have a quiet rhythm, a simple life. She's an event planner, often out meeting clients, and I work as a software developer. We don't have kids yet, but we've been talking about it. Everything was fine, or so I thought. It was a little after 9 p.m. when I saw it. A message popped up on my phone: "Motion detected at your back door." My first thought was that it was probably a cat or maybe a delivery driver leaving a package. But then I remembered I had set up the cameras a few months ago after a couple of neighbors had reported suspicious activity. I wasn't overly paranoid, but it felt like the right thing to do. I opened the camera feed and wasn't expecting much. But when the live footage loaded, my stomach dropped. At first, everything seemed normal. The backyard was dark, lit only by the dim glow of the streetlights. The camera was angled just enough to capture the back porch and the side of the house, which was mostly shielded by some large bushes. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then I saw it. A shadow moved. It was quick, like someone had darted across the edge of the camera's range. I leaned in closer, my eyes narrowing. It wasn't the typical rustling from the wind or an animal scurrying about. This was a human shape. Someone was moving around outside. At first, my mind raced through the possibilities. A trespasser? Maybe a friend of Claire's that I hadn't recognized, just dropping by unannounced? I kept watching, not sure what to do. The figure moved again, this time more deliberately, crouching behind the bushes along the side of the house. Whoever it was definitely trying to avoid detection. I zoomed in, hoping to get a better look at their face, but the resolution wasn't great. It was too dark to see clearly, but I could make out that they were wearing a hoodie, obscuring their features. I didn't recognize the person at all, and that worried me. If it had been someone I knew, they would have knocked or called. No one just creeps around like this. I tapped on my phone to call Claire, but then, just as quickly, another notification popped up: "Motion detected near your front door." Now, I was really starting to feel uneasy. What was going on? Was there more than one person? Why were they moving around both sides of the house? I clicked over to the front camera feed and immediately saw the same shadowy figure standing by the driveway. But this time, they were closer to the front door, lingering as if waiting for something. I felt a chill creep up my spine. No one was supposed to be there. I had only just closed the door behind me when I got home, and Claire was supposed to be out with friends, not arriving back until much later. I didn't know what to do next. I thought about calling the police, but then I remembered something. There was an emergency feature in the security app that allowed me to trigger a loud alarm on the cameras if I thought someone was trespassing. The idea was to scare them off without involving the authorities right away. I decided to activate it. The alarm blared out into the night. The figure outside froze, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw them flinch. The shadows from the trees made it hard to be sure, but it almost looked like they ducked down, as though trying to hide. Then something strange happened. The figure stood up, turned, and walked toward the back gate. At that exact moment, I heard the sound of a car door slamming in the distance. The figure's movements seemed more frantic now, almost hurried. I held my breath, watching intently. The person didn't run. They didn't even seem to be in a hurry, but there was something about their body language that felt off. Just as they reached the gate, the figure hesitated. They turned back toward the house, glancing around one last time before walking quickly out of the camera's view. I sat there, staring at the screen, processing everything. Who was that person? Why were they on my property, sneaking around? And why didn't they leave immediately after the alarm went off? I could feel my mind spinning with unanswered questions. I opened the door to the back porch and walked outside, just to make sure everything was in place. The backyard looked quiet again, the night air still. But something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. I went back inside, locked the door behind me, and called Claire. She picked up after the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice light. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm on my way back home now. Why? She replied. I hesitated for a moment. Something wasn't adding up, but I couldn't put my finger on it yet. Just, be careful. I think someone was on the property. I don't know who it was, but I saw someone near the back gate. I said, trying to sound calm. Let me know when you're here, okay? Okay, she said, clearly sounding a little confused, but not overly concerned. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up and sat back down, replaying the footage in my mind. But this time, I wasn't just concerned about the stranger on my property. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had been watching someone for a while, and I had no idea who they were. But the worst part was, I didn't know if the person I was most afraid of was the one creeping around the house, or the one who had been living under my roof this whole time. When I hung up with Claire, I sat in silence for a while, the eerie feeling in my gut refusing to dissipate. I kept replaying the footage over and over in my mind. The figure in the dark, crouching by the bushes, hiding and waiting. Whoever it was, they were clearly avoiding being seen. Why? And why the sudden urgency when the alarm went off? It didn't add up. I felt the urge to go outside and check again, but I resisted. It was already dark, and I didn't want to make myself look paranoid. But then I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I glanced at the clock. Only 5 minutes had passed since I spoke with Claire. She was home earlier than I expected, and the sharp pang of unease hit me again. I walked over to the window and peeked out, watching her car pull up, the headlights cutting through the dim light of the street. As she stepped out, I noticed something strange. She didn't look quite like herself. Her movements were hurried, her shoulders tense, like she was in a rush, trying to get inside quickly. I shook it off. Maybe she was just tired from her long day. Still, there was something unsettling about the way she walked toward the house, almost as if she was avoiding something or someone. I quickly brushed the thought aside, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. I decided to wait a few minutes before I went out to greet her, wanting to give her a little space to settle in. When I finally opened the door and stepped outside to greet her, I was caught off guard by her expression. She seemed distracted, as if she hadn't fully arrived in the present moment. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. How was your day? Good. Just busy. Nothing unusual, she replied quickly, but her eyes avoided mine, looking anywhere but at me. A small red flag went up in my mind. Claire had always been an open book. She didn't usually avoid eye contact like this, not unless something was bothering her. I decided not to push it. If she was feeling overwhelmed or stressed, I didn't want to add to it. Do you want me to make us something to eat? I asked, trying to break the silence. Yeah, that sounds good, she said, her voice almost too soft. Then, she added, I'll be right inside. I just need to get something from the car. I nodded and watched her walk back to the driveway. The sound of her car door slamming echoed in the quiet night. I couldn't shake the strange feeling that had settled in my chest. Something wasn't right. Maybe it was all just coincidence, maybe my overactive imagination, but my instincts told me I was missing something. I turned back inside to start dinner, but the unease lingered. I pulled out my phone, planning to go over the security footage again. As I scrolled through the app, trying to find the moments that stood out, I noticed something. It was the timestamp. I hadn't thought much about it earlier, but as I looked closer, I saw that the motion alerts had gone off several times. More than just the two I'd noticed earlier. Each alert had a time gap of only minutes between them. I felt my stomach twist. Had someone been here all night? Was the person I had seen near the back gate just the tip of the iceberg? I began scrolling back, reviewing every alert, trying to piece things together. That's when I saw it. A series of images flashed before my eyes, each one marking an unexpected motion detection, each one showing a different angle of our property, until I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, in one of the frames, was a glimpse of Claire, standing near the back door, alone, at around 6:45 p.m., when she had told me she was with her friends. It was a brief moment, but there was no denying it. She was standing there, her back to the camera, almost like she was waiting for someone. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Could it be? I zoomed in, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. She looked agitated. Her body language was stiff, like she was expecting something, someone. But I still couldn't figure it out. My mind raced through every possibility. Was it a mistake? Was she just getting something out of the garage? But no, it didn't make sense. Why was she standing there, in the dark, when she had told me she'd been with her friends? I knew I had to confront her. My mind was a whirlpool of confusion, but deep down, something told me that I was on the verge of uncovering something I couldn't unsee. When Claire came back inside, her arms full of bags, I waited for a moment. I needed to stay calm, to think this through. "Hey," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "I need to ask you something." She froze, looking at me with wide eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tight. "Earlier today, when you were at your friend's, did you go anywhere else?" I asked carefully, trying not to sound accusatory. She paused, then shook her head. "What do you mean? I told you. I was with Jennifer at the cafe all afternoon." "I know, but," I hesitated. "I checked the cameras, Claire. I saw you outside, by the back door, at around 6:45. Alone. What were you doing?" Her expression faltered. For a split second, I saw something in her eyes that made my heart drop. Guilt? Fear? She quickly masked it with a forced smile, but it was too late. The damage was done. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice now trembling. "I was at the cafe. I swear." I stood up, unable to hold back the frustration anymore. "Claire, don't lie to me. I saw you. I know what I saw." She flinched at my words. The tension between us was palpable. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. I couldn't understand why she was acting like this. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I married, was suddenly a stranger to me. Before she could respond, I heard it, another notification from the security app. This time, the alert was for the front door. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure what I was about to discover, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. I opened the live feed and froze. There, standing in the doorway, was a man. He was partially hidden by the frame, but there was no mistaking it. The same figure from the footage earlier, now standing directly in front of our house. And Claire. She was watching him, just outside the camera's view. The sudden appearance of the man at the front door hit me like a lightning bolt. My heart raced. My mind scrambled to understand what was unfolding in front of me. I could barely breathe as I stared at the screen, the man's figure half hidden by the doorframe. He was taller than me, with broad shoulders, and dressed in dark clothing that blended with the shadows. It wasn't the same guy from earlier, the one who had been sneaking around the backyard. This one was different, more direct, more purposeful. And what sent a chill down my spine wasn't just the man himself, but the way Claire was reacting. I glanced over at her, her face now pale, her hands trembling as she set the bags she was holding down on the counter. Her gaze darted nervously between me and the front door. She hadn't seen the live feed yet, but the way she was acting told me everything. She knew exactly who that man was. I felt a tightness in my chest, and my mouth went dry. I had to ask, but I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. "Who is he, Claire?" My voice barely rose above a whisper, the weight of the question hanging in the air between us. She froze, her eyes locking onto mine for a long, agonizing moment. It felt like time stood still. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she looked away, her eyes flicking to the front door as if expecting the man to just disappear. I didn't know what to say next. Part of me wanted to shout, to demand the truth right there, but another part of me was afraid of what I might hear. I don't know," she said, her voice shaky, though it didn't sound entirely convincing. There was a sense of panic in her tone, but also something else, something that felt rehearsed, as if she'd said those words before, or at least thought about saying them. I didn't buy it. I knew she was hiding something. My gut told me that this man, whoever he was, had to be someone important. Claire's reaction was too extreme for him to be just some random stranger. I turned back to the security footage, my eyes scanning the screen for any sign of what was about to happen. The man outside was still standing there, motionless. It was almost as if he was waiting for something. Waiting for Claire, maybe. I zoomed in on his face, but the lighting was too poor, the shadows too thick to make out any details. I hit the pause button, my mind racing. I needed to think. The pieces weren't fitting together. I'd watched the footage earlier, and Claire's unexpected appearance near the back door made no sense, especially now that this stranger had shown up. Why had she been standing out there? Was she meeting him? And if so, why had she lied about being at the cafe? My thoughts were interrupted when Claire let out a sharp breath. She was pacing now, her hands wringing together as though she was trying to gather her thoughts. She walked toward the kitchen window, peering through the blinds toward the front door. "Sam, please, just let it go," she said quietly, her voice breaking slightly. It's not what you think. I didn't know what to say to that. The fact that she was still lying to my face about something so important stung more than anything else. How could she ask me to just ignore this? How could she think I would just let it go? My mind was spiraling out of control. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a web of confusion and betrayal. I stepped toward her, trying to keep my voice steady. Let it go? Claire, you're standing here telling me that I'm wrong, but I saw it. I saw you out there, waiting for him, and now he's at the door. Don't tell me to just ignore it. Who is he? Her eyes filled with tears, and I saw a flash of something, guilt, fear, before she quickly turned away. I'm sorry, Sam. I didn't want this. But you wouldn't understand. I didn't want you to find out like this. I was losing patience. Find out what? What are you talking about, Claire? I've been married to you for 6 years. How could you keep something like this from me? Claire didn't respond right away. Instead, she wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. She seemed to be collecting herself, trying to figure out how to explain whatever this was. I could tell she was struggling, but my anger was bubbling up inside me, my mind still racing through all the possibilities. What could be so serious that she was hiding it from me? Why the secrecy? And why, after all this time, was she still protecting this man outside our door? Finally, Claire turned back to face me, her expression serious. His name is Derek, she said quietly. He's an old friend of mine, from before we met, and we've been seeing each other. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't process what she was saying. She and Derek had been seeing each other? She'd been meeting him behind my back. I had to ask, though I was terrified to hear the answer. How long? 6 months, she whispered. The words felt like acid, burning through the air between us. My mind couldn't catch up. 6 months? That meant she'd been lying to me for months. Our whole marriage was built on a lie. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit down. The reality of what she was saying was too much. I had no idea how to react. A part of me wanted to scream at her, to demand every detail, but another part of me wanted to walk away, to cut ties and walk out the door, never looking back. Derek's presence at our doorstep, Claire's refusal to tell me the truth until now, the fact that she had been sneaking around with him behind my back, it all felt like an enormous weight pressing down on me. But there was something else, something even more unsettling than the revelation of her affair. Claire wasn't acting the way I thought she would. She wasn't pleading for forgiveness or remorse. She seemed relieved, almost like the truth was finally out, like she had been waiting for me to discover it. What was that about? Why did she seem so calm? My thoughts were interrupted by a sharp knock on the front door. Claire froze, her eyes widening in fear. The man, Derek, was still out there. And this time, he wasn't leaving without an answer. The knock on the front door echoed through the house, sharp and deliberate. It was as though Derek knew exactly how to make his presence felt, how to demand attention without a word. My heart pounded in my chest, but my anger, my confusion, it all swirled into a storm of emotions. I looked at Claire, who was standing frozen, her hand clutching the edge of the counter as if she were bracing herself for impact. I couldn't look away from her face, though a part of me wanted to. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a level of deception I never saw coming. 6 months. 6 months of my life, my marriage, my trust in her, all built on a lie. I could feel the weight of it settling in the pit of my stomach, suffocating me. Claire's eyes flicked toward the door. Sam, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please don't do this. It's not what you think. Not what I think. I barked, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. You've been seeing this guy for 6 months behind my back, and now you're telling me it's not what I think. What am I supposed to think, Claire? What else am I missing? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a step toward the door, her hand outstretched as if she were going to open it. I couldn't let her do that. Not after everything she'd just admitted. My instincts screamed at me to stop her, but I didn't know what to say. I was beyond words at this point. Don't, I said, my voice coming out low and dangerous. She hesitated, her hand hovering just inches from the door handle. I could see her breathing heavily, as if preparing for something monumental, something she knew was coming. Her face twisted with regret, but there was something else there, too. Something darker. She wasn't just guilty. She was resigned, as if she had already accepted whatever would happen next. I can't keep running from this, Sam, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted you to find out this way. But Derek, he's been there for me in ways that you never were. I've been lost for so long. I didn't know what to say to that. The words hit me like daggers, sharp and cold. I felt like I was suffocating. Lost, I repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. I've been here, Claire. I've been here this whole time. You just never bothered to let me in. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire lowered her hand from the door, and for a moment, we just stood there, looking at each other, neither of us knowing what to do. My heart was racing, but my mind was still trying to catch up with the magnitude of what was happening. This wasn't just a minor mistake, a misunderstanding. It was a full-scale betrayal, one that I couldn't just sweep under the rug. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach, the strange feeling that something even darker was unfolding, something I wasn't prepared for. Another knock, louder this time, cut through the tension in the room. Derek wasn't leaving. He wasn't going to just walk away. I walked to the door, the sound of my footsteps too loud in the quiet room. When I reached the door, I paused, my hand on the handle. Claire was behind me now, her presence heavy in the air, like a shadow that refused to leave. "I'm doing this for both of us, Sam," she said, her voice trembling again. "You need to hear this from me, not from him." I turned to face her. "What do you mean, hear it from him? What could he possibly say that you haven't already destroyed?" Claire's eyes flickered, like she was trying to decide whether to tell me more. "You don't understand. He's not just anyone. He's part of something bigger, Sam. Something that could change everything." At that moment, my grip on the door handle tightened. I wasn't sure what she was talking about, but I knew it was something I hadn't anticipated. Something that felt like it was pulling me into a world I didn't recognize. "Open the door, Sam," Claire said, her voice a little more forceful now. "He's not going anywhere." I hesitated. My heart was still pounding, the anger and confusion still swirling, but beneath all of it, something else was emerging, a sense of foreboding. There was something Claire wasn't telling me, something important, and it was clear that Derek was the key to understanding it all. I didn't know what that something was, but I was about to find out. I took a deep breath and turned the knob. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Derek standing on the other side. He was tall, with a sharp jawline and dark, intense eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. There was no sign of hesitation in his stance. He knew exactly why he was here. He looked me up and down with a cold, calculating gaze before speaking, his voice smooth but commanding. "You must be Sam," he said, his tone almost mocking. "I've heard a lot about you." I clenched my fists at my sides. "I don't think you've heard anything about me that matters," I shot back, barely able to keep my anger in check. Derek raised an eyebrow, unfazed by my tone. "Maybe not, but I'm about to change that." His words hit me like a punch. My mind raced to make sense of what he was saying. What did he mean? Why did he sound like he knew something I didn't? Claire stepped forward then, her eyes never leaving Derek. "Sam, you need to listen to him. You need to understand what's really going on. This isn't just about us. It's bigger than that." I turned to her, my eyes narrowing. "What's bigger than this, Claire? What's bigger than you lying to me, sneaking around behind my back with him?" Claire's face softened, but there was no apology in her eyes. Instead, there was something else, something darker. "I'm sorry, Sam, but I couldn't protect you from this anymore. You need to know what you're really up against." I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about something I had no way of understanding, something that was now standing in my doorway. Derek stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "We're running out of time," he said, his voice low and urgent. "And you're going to need to know everything, Sam, whether you're ready or not." The door slammed shut behind him, and in that moment, I knew my life would never be the same again. I could feel the air grow heavy in the room, the tension palpable as Derek stepped past me, his eyes scanning the interior of the house like he was seeing it for the first time. Claire stood at the back, her eyes darting nervously between the two of us, but she didn't say a word. It was as if she had already resigned herself to whatever was about to unfold. There was no more denying what had been happening, no more pretending. The truth was out in the open, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear the rest of it. Derek moved towards the living room, his movements slow, calculated. It was like he was in control of the situation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this moment, this meeting, had been planned long before I ever opened that door. It was almost as if he had been waiting for this exact moment, for me to finally catch on. You're making a mistake, Sam, Derek said, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. His eyes met mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. There was something unsettling about him, something predatory. But it wasn't just the way he looked at me that bothered me. It was the way he spoke, as if he knew everything about me, about my life, like he had already sized me up and found me lacking. I'm not making a mistake, I said, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. You're the one who's been hiding things, not me. Derek smirked, the corner of his lips twitching upward in what almost seemed like amusement. You still don't get it, do you? He said, shaking his head slowly. This has nothing to do with you or Claire anymore. This is about something much bigger. And whether you like it or not, you're already involved. I felt my heart race. Involved? What the hell are you talking about? He turned to Claire, who was still standing near the door, watching the exchange unfold like it was something she'd already seen before. I could see the regret in her eyes, but there was no turning back now. She was as much a part of this as he was. Tell him, Claire, Derek said softly, almost gently. Tell him everything. Claire hesitated, her hands wringing together. She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow, but also something else, a kind of fear, as if she knew what was coming but didn't know how to explain it. I took a step toward her, the anger bubbling up inside me again. Tell me what, Claire? I demanded. What the hell is going on? What have you gotten me into? She looked away, her eyes welling with tears. I could see the pain in her face, but also something darker, something that made me feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into an abyss. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Sam, Claire said quietly, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, but this isn't something you can walk away from. You've been a part of this from the beginning, even if you didn't know it. I felt my stomach twist with confusion. What are you talking about? I asked again, my voice rising. What do you mean? I've been a part of this. Derek stepped forward then, his face serious, almost sympathetic. You were never supposed to know, Sam, he said, his tone surprisingly soft. You were never meant to be in the loop. But now that you know, well, there's no going back. I took a step back, trying to process what he was saying. Loop? What loop? What are you talking about, Derek? You and Claire have been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, and now you're telling me this is some sort of conspiracy? Claire let out a shaky breath, wiping her eyes. It's not a conspiracy, Sam. It's bigger than that. Derek and I, we've been working together. Not just on our own, but with a group. A group that has been keeping an eye on you. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Keeping an eye on me? I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. What the hell does that even mean? Derek nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. It means you've been under surveillance, Sam. Everything about your life, your job, your relationships. We've been watching you. I stood there, frozen in place. This wasn't just an affair anymore. It wasn't just about Claire and Derek betraying me. This was something else. Something far darker. Why? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Why the hell would you be watching me? Claire stepped forward now, her hands shaking. Because you're part of something, Sam. Something we never meant for you to get involved in. But now that you know too much, we don't have a choice. Too much. I laughed, though it felt more like a gasp. I don't know anything. What are you talking about, Claire? What could I possibly be a part of? Derek's face darkened as he spoke again, his voice low and almost menacing. You've been working with us, Sam, without even knowing it. You've been involved since the day you got that job. Since the day you met Claire. I took a step back, my mind spinning. What job? What do you mean, I've been involved? I don't understand. Claire's voice cracked as she spoke. It's the company, Sam. The one you've been working for. You thought it was just another tech company, right? But it's not. It's a front for something much bigger, something far more dangerous than you can imagine. I felt like the ground beneath me had just crumbled away. My head was spinning, my thoughts in complete disarray. No, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. You're lying. This doesn't make sense. Derek stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. You've been working for us this whole time, Sam. You've been gathering information for us without even knowing it. All those small tasks you thought were just part of your job. They were all part of a much bigger plan. A plan that's been in motion for years. I felt the walls close in on me. The world I thought I knew, the job, the life I'd built, was crumbling before my eyes. I was a pawn in a game I didn't understand, and the people I trusted most had been playing me the whole time. Derek and Claire were no longer just two people who had betrayed me. They were part of something far more sinister, something that involved me more than I ever realized. As the weight of the truth settled on my shoulders, I knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. The life I had was gone, and whatever was coming next, it would change everything. My mind was racing. I had no idea what I was hearing. I felt as though the floor beneath me had cracked wide open, and I was falling, spiraling deeper and deeper into something I couldn't possibly understand. Claire and Derek weren't just individuals I had trusted. They were players in some game that I was somehow already tangled up in, and I had no idea how I had gotten here. Gathering information for you. I repeated, my voice hoarse. It felt like a foreign language, one I wasn't equipped to translate. What are you even talking about? I don't know anything about any plan. I've been working my job like any normal person. What plan? What is this really about, Claire? Claire's eyes flicked to Derek for a moment, then back to me. There was a visible struggle behind her gaze, as if she was caught between her guilt and something else, something she wasn't saying. She opened her mouth to speak, but it was Derek who responded instead, his voice smooth, calm, as though he were explaining a business transaction, not revealing the deepest secret of my life. You don't understand, Sam, Derek said slowly, almost patronizingly. This has been going on for longer than you think. That job of yours at the tech company? It wasn't just a job. It was a stepping stone. You were chosen, Sam. Chosen to be a part of something bigger. I felt my heart skip a beat. Chosen? I asked, the word barely making sense in my mind. Chosen for what? To work in a cubicle and write code? You've got to be kidding me. Derek gave a small, cold smile. Oh, it was much more than that. You were the perfect candidate, Sam. Smart, reliable, trusted. You fit right in. And we've been guiding you, nudging you, towards the bigger picture, piece by piece, without you ever realizing it. Every project you worked on, every late night at the office, every meeting that seemed innocuous, it was all part of a plan we've been orchestrating for years. I took a step back, trying to process his words, but they were coming at me too fast, too overwhelming. Stop, I muttered, my voice barely a whisper. Just stop. I don't get it. What do you mean, you've been guiding me? What the hell do you want from me? Derek's eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something dangerous behind his composed exterior. He stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back, but my legs felt like they might give out any second. Not what we want from you, Derek said, his voice a low growl now. It's what you've already given. You've been feeding us everything. Everything you thought was normal, every bit of code you wrote, every algorithm you perfected, it's all been feeding into something bigger. Into us. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't comprehend what he was saying. This isn't real. This has to be a joke. Claire stepped forward then, her face pale, but there was an intensity in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. It's real, Sam, she said softly, her voice cracking with emotion. It's real, and I'm sorry you had to find out like this. But I couldn't keep lying to you. Not anymore. Derek and I, we're part of a group that's been watching the tech industry for years. We've been monitoring key players, people who have access to the kinds of data and systems that could change everything. You're one of those key players, Sam. I couldn't absorb it. It was too much. My life, everything I thought I knew, was turning upside down. I had been working for some clandestine group. Was that what they were saying? I had been unknowingly helping them manipulate systems, feed information, and now they were telling me I was part of something much darker? I didn't know. Claire continued, her voice trembling now. I didn't know how to tell you, how to make you understand. Derek, he convinced me to stay quiet, to keep you in the dark. But I couldn't keep living this lie. I couldn't pretend that you weren't involved when you were. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I spat, my voice rising again. Why didn't you trust me? She looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes. I didn't want to lose you. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd hate me. But now, I can't undo what's been done. I can't change what you already know. The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her how she could do this to me, but part of me knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about her. It wasn't even just about me anymore. There was something much bigger, something that had been hiding right under my nose this whole time. I was connected to something I didn't understand, and now, there was no way out. You still don't see it, Derek said, his voice cold, his patience wearing thin. This is bigger than all of us. This is about control, Sam. Power. You've been feeding into the system that runs the world, and you didn't even realize it. Every piece of information you've given us, every project you've worked on, it's all been for a purpose. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to demand answers, to understand how deep this went. But the words wouldn't come. The truth was too much. It was all too much. It felt like I was standing on the edge of an abyss, staring into a void I couldn't possibly comprehend. How long had this been going on? How long had I been a part of it without knowing? And, most importantly, how was I supposed to get out now? Derek's gaze never wavered. There's no going back, Sam, he said, his voice dark. You're already too involved. The information you've given us, it's already been used. Your involvement can't be undone. You're in this now, whether you like it or not. I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to move. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was deeper in this than I had ever imagined. Claire and Derek weren't just players in some game. They were part of a vast, shadowy network that had been manipulating everything around me. And now that I knew too much, there was no way out. The game had changed, and I was no longer just a pawn. I was the prize. The question wasn't how I would get out. It was whether I even could. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls closing tighter and tighter with each passing second. I could feel the weight of Derek's words crushing me, his cold, calculated gaze never leaving me. Claire stood there, silent, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't place. Regret? Fear? Or something darker, something I wasn't ready to face? My heart hammered in my chest as I struggled to piece everything together. You're saying I've been working for you this entire time. I muttered, my voice hoarse, the words not fully forming in my mind, without knowing it. And now you're telling me there's no way out. That's right, Derek replied, his voice low and firm. You've been feeding us information, helping us build something we couldn't do alone. You've been a key player in this, Sam, even if you didn't realize it. And now that you do, there's no turning back. I could barely process what he was saying. This wasn't just some conspiracy. This was real. My life, my job, everything I thought I knew had been part of a larger plan. And I was just the pawn, the unknowing accomplice. I turned to Claire, my mind reeling with the magnitude of everything. Why didn't you tell me? All this time. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, my voice thick with emotion. I needed her to explain, to make me understand. But her expression was empty, hollow, like she had already given up on explaining. I couldn't, Sam, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want to drag you into this. But I couldn't keep lying to you anymore. Couldn't keep lying? I repeated, incredulous. You've been lying to me for months, Claire. For months. You've been seeing him, behind my back, and now you're telling me you couldn't keep lying? It's a little late for that, don't you think? Claire flinched at my words, but Derek stepped forward, his eyes flashing with irritation. Enough, he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. This isn't helping. We don't have time for your emotional tantrums. There are bigger things at stake here than your feelings. I glared at him, my fists clenched at my sides. Bigger things? Like what, Derek? What could be bigger than this? He paused, taking a moment to study me with a look of cold calculation. Then, without missing a beat, he spoke again. The truth. You want to know what you've really been involved in? It's not just about the information you've been feeding us. It's about control. Sam, you're a part of something much bigger than you can comprehend. Something that could change everything. I felt a chill run through my body. Change everything? What the hell are you talking about? Derek took a deep breath, almost as if he were preparing for a long explanation. You've been helping us collect and manipulate data, Sam. Your work has been feeding into a larger system, one that's been orchestrated for years. We've been building something, a system of control that, once it's complete, will give us the power to influence not just markets, not just companies, but entire governments. You've been a part of that system. You've been unknowingly helping us set it all up. I took a step back, my mind spinning. You're saying, you've been using me to build some kind of global control system? The words felt foreign, but the way Derek said them made it seem all too real. That's exactly what I'm saying, Derek replied, his tone cool, as though he were explaining a simple fact. You, Sam, are a crucial piece in all of this. And now that you know, you have a choice. I could feel the room spinning. Everything around me, my job, my marriage, my life, was unraveling faster than I could process. The reality of it all was suffocating. I had been unknowingly working for a shadowy group that was building a system of global control. It was insane, unbelievable. But there was no denying it now. You have two choices, Sam. Derek continued, his voice low and controlled. You can walk away. You can forget everything you've learned tonight and go back to your life. You can pretend this never happened. But know this, we'll be watching you. Always. You'll be a liability. And when we're ready, we'll come for you. My heart pounded in my chest. What kind of choice was that? Walk away, pretend like nothing happened? But the idea of walking away, of living in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder, felt like it would destroy me. There was no peace in that. No resolution. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek smiled, almost as if he'd been waiting for me to ask. Or you can join us. You can embrace your role in this, become an active part of the system we're building. You'll be in a position of power, Sam. You'll have access to everything you ever dreamed of. But you have to make the choice. It's entirely up to you. I stared at him, my mind reeling. The idea of joining them, of embracing this dark world they were offering me, was horrifying. But at the same time, there was a part of me that could see the appeal. Power. Control. Everything I could ever want at my fingertips. I could have it all. But at what cost? Think carefully, Derek said, his voice low, almost coaxing. This isn't a decision you can take back. Once you make it, there's no going back. I stood there in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Claire stood to the side, her eyes never leaving me, her face pale, as though she was bracing for whatever decision I was about to make. Her betrayal had shattered me, but somehow, Derek's words were even worse. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't even just about me. It was about everything. The entire world was at stake, and my decision would have consequences far beyond what I could imagine. I looked between them, the two people I thought I knew. They were no longer just friends or partners. They were agents of something I couldn't even begin to understand. The truth, as terrifying as it was, had become undeniable. My choices weren't simple anymore. I wasn't just deciding what to do with my life. I was deciding whether I would be part of something that could change the world forever, or whether I would try to escape it and live in fear, always wondering what would happen if I didn't. The air was thick with tension as I stood there, my mind racing, my future uncertain. Everything I thought I knew had been ripped away, and in its place was only a choice. A choice that could destroy everything, or give me the power to rebuild it. And in that moment, I realized something. There was no such thing as walking away. Not anymore. The weight of the moment pressed on me like 1,000 pounds. Derek's cold, calculating gaze never wavered, his offer still hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Claire stood there, silent but pleading with her eyes, as if she, too, knew this was the moment of reckoning. I stood at the edge of a precipice, my future dangling by a thread, the decision before me as vast and daunting as the unknown itself. For the first time, I allowed myself to really think about what Derek was offering. Power, control, everything I could ever want, all within my grasp. But then, I thought about the life I had before all of this, the life where I had been happy, where I had made honest choices, where my future didn't involve shadows, secrets, and manipulation. Was that really the life I wanted to walk away from? Was the promise of power worth losing everything else? I could feel the tension in my bones, the tightness in my chest that told me this decision wasn't just about me. It was about something deeper. My values, my sense of self, everything that had shaped me over the years. Could I really abandon all of that for a world where I didn't know who I could trust? A world built on lies and control? I looked at Claire, and in that moment, something in me softened. I remembered the person I had fallen in love with. The woman who was once my partner, my equal. Yes, she had betrayed me in the most painful way possible, but she had also been trapped, just like me. We had both been part of something bigger than we realized. She had her reasons that now made sense, but didn't justify her actions. She had made her choice, but I had to make mine. Derek was right about one thing. There was no going back once I made a choice. But I wasn't going to make it for the promise of power or influence. I wasn't going to let my future be dictated by people who saw me as nothing more than a tool in their game. I had a life outside of this twisted world, a life I could still rebuild if I was brave enough to fight for it. I refuse, I said, my voice steady now, more confident than I felt. I won't be a part of this. Derek's expression didn't change, but I could see the flicker of annoyance in his eyes. You're making a mistake, Sam, he said coldly. You have no idea what you're turning down. Maybe I don't, I replied, stepping back from him. But I know one thing for sure. I won't let you destroy the life I've worked for. I won't let you drag me into this darkness. If you think I'll join your twisted system, you're wrong. There was a long pause. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The silence between us stretched out, suffocating, but I stood my ground. I was done being afraid, done being manipulated. I wasn't just a pawn in their game anymore. I was done with that. Claire's eyes softened, her tears still fresh on her cheeks, but there was a flicker of relief in them now. She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. Sam, I'm sorry. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. I nodded, though the pain of her betrayal still lingered. I know you didn't. But this is something I have to do. For me. For us. For everything I believe in. I turned to Derek one last time. You've lost me. I'm done with this. Derek stared at me for a long moment, his face a mask of cold indifference. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out the door, disappearing into the night, taking his promises of power and control with him. As the door clicked shut behind him, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, as though a dark cloud had finally broken. I turned back to Claire. She looked at me with a mixture of relief and sorrow. I never meant for it to get this far, she said quietly, her voice breaking again. I never meant to pull you into this. I walked over to her, taking her hands in mine. There was no denying the pain she had caused, but there was still a part of me that cared for her, that wanted her to find peace. It's over now, I said softly. We both have a chance to move on, to rebuild. We can start fresh. We don't need them, Claire. She nodded slowly, her tears still falling, but now there was hope in her eyes, a light that had been missing before. You're right. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not going back to that life. I'm done too. As the night stretched on, I felt the weight of the decision settle into my bones. It wasn't easy, but I had made the right choice. It was time to rebuild my life. Not in the shadows, not under the control of anyone else, but on my own terms. The road ahead wouldn't be simple. There would be consequences for my decision, things I couldn't foresee. But as I stood there, with Claire by my side, I felt a glimmer of hope, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I had taken control of my own fate, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was finally free. As I looked out the window into the night, I knew that my journey wasn't over. But I also knew that no matter where it took me, I would walk it on my own terms. And that was a freedom I could finally live with. The end of one chapter is always the beginning of another. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to turn the page.